This episode's made possible by Planful.
Hi, this is Dave Parsons, CFO of Zuto, and you're listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 957.
It's interesting when you don't have a deep insight to your business. You look at other indicators that can be misleading. And for example, they're raising a lot of revenue, a lot of fundraising revenue. But if you're losing money off of it, you don't have that perspective. The money's not getting to the mission. And that was their perspective. Their perspective was just on, but we're raising a lot of money. And I said, yeah, but where is it going? You have a sense to become the toll taker, right? It's like the money all goes to the toll takers and the roads never get improved. First thing I had to say is, no, we need a clear perspective. Then when I went to look, well, we don't have the platforms to get us that. I brought in contractors. Oh, this will take 18 months. I don't have 18 months. We're doing this in 7.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Michael Kennedy, CFO of the Muscular Dystrophy Association. When Michael Kennedy first stepped into the CFO office at the Muscular Dystrophy Association, he recalls being surprised to learn the association was spending $8 million annually on office space across the country. As it turned out, the 93 offices occupied by the MDA were a legacy of the association's historic Labor Day Telethon. Back in time, the MDA wanted to have an office nearby every local television station that was participating in the Telethon's broadcast. However, as the Telethon lost its mojo in the age of the internet, the office expense had to go. You'll hear that story and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this.
Hi, I'm Rowan Tonkin, Chief Marketing Officer at Planful, and we're a proud sponsor of CFO Thought Leader. At Planful, we're empowering teams just like yours to drive peak financial performance in every corner of your business. What sets Planful apart? We have purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. This means we can get you up and running within weeks, and it requires minimal IT involvement. So you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business in your key financial processes. Best of all, you can't outgrow us. We take the pain of growing away with an unmatched ability to scale with you. You have an endless runway with Planful. See why over 1,300 customers around the world choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Go to planful.com and see how you can make financial performance a team sport in your business.
Hello, we're speaking with Michael Kennedy, CFO and COO of the Muscular Dystrophy Association. Michael, welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be on.
Michael, you have a real interesting background. Did a lot of globe hopping in your past. Can you go back in time and try to identify those experiences for us that you feel prepared you to be a CFO? What comes to mind?
Well, I look back on my career and I got started in a large auditing company, Ernst & Young, and most of my clients were very large global organizations. And that sort of gave me that passion. It was based out in New York. Gave me that passion to work in that arena. When I left them, I spent the next almost 20 years working with big global organizations, including spending 15 years working internationally and a long stint living over in Europe and doing so. And it really formed a different perspective for me as a CFO. Working with different cultures, working with different people that approach things differently, really taught me that there's not one way. And so it shaped my leadership capabilities as a finance officer to be able to how to work with large amounts of people to achieve a goal. And I think that is probably the biggest benefit I got of that path, that early path, was it turned me into more of a leadership CFO than just a financial transaction CFO. And I think that's paid dividends throughout my career and throughout my progression in my career. I then, after a period of time, I moved on to private equity companies, mid-size companies. I was working out of New York for that. And we would take companies that were in the $200 to $300 million range and try to get them to the $1 billion range. Typically, they get sold out then. Everybody wants to keep a long-term legacy of a company, but when you have $1 billion value, it's tempting to exit. And I did that for a number of years. And then it brought me to, what do I want to do next? And I really want to take my skill sets I learned over the years and apply them to a nonprofit. And interesting enough, there's many nonprofits actually lack the financial and operational skill sets that I could give them. And it's funny, my realization here is there's not a lot of differences. It's hard to raise a dollar. You want to keep track of the dollar you raise, so you want cost efficiency. But then the big difference was, instead of enriching a shareholder, I get to enrich a family dealing with neuromuscular diseases. And I have to say, the pride in my work, or the feeling, is much different. Not to say I didn't have a good feeling of what I accomplished in the public sector companies, but it's different and it's rewarding when you know that when I did the digital transformation here and I brought them up into a platform, and which saved them during the COVID pandemic. If we didn't have a cloud-based platform, I don't know how we would have made it through. And this is a 70-year organization. I did dance-a-thons when I was in college for MDA, and here I am. So it's an interesting full circle of my career, but it has also energized me as well. All of a sudden, retirement is not in my future anymore, and because I'm really enjoying what I'm doing and the impact I get to have.
Michael, the extent of time that you were building your career outside the U.S. is more than 10 years. When you first go overseas, was it something you had always planned to do, or did this just opportunity come your way? And
it was an opportunity. I'd never had the wildest imagination that at this point in my life, I would have had visited over 60 countries. It wasn't even a dream. I just assumed I would work out in New York City my entire career. And then when I went over to work for American Express in New York, after 5 years of working with them in New York, I had the opportunity, to go over to Europe and be the CFO of, the southern part of Europe, Germany, Switzerland, and in Spain. And it was a great experience. Now, it was a very interesting experience because large companies send you over and it's like, figure it out. There's not a lot of like, all right, we're going to handhold you. No, the reason we sent you over there is you figure it out. And it really teaches you how to make decisions, though. Now, you could also get into a panic moment if you're not ready for that. But for me, it taught me, all right, I have to make this decision. So it gives you the confidence to be a decision maker. And I have to say that early experience in my early 30s really shifted me on how to think as almost like a business owner and not just a financial police officer, so to speak, which many finance people go down that route of just discipline and producing information. And this gave me the opportunity. No, I'm helping run the organization. And that just changed my whole view of my career path.
Well, I just want to, for the listeners, I just want to make them aware that within the financial services realm, 12 years with Amex and largely in Europe, but you come back at one point and you're the CFO of Latin America. You have a 2-year stint with John Hancock Financial Services, where you're actually, were you based in China, or is your work involved in China?
No, I made that decision not to live there. And so, with my family, you have to pick and choose your spots. But obviously the stint was 2 years, but they were going public. And they were looking for someone coming out of a public background. And I became their international CFO. But the traveling was crazy, right? If it takes you 2 days to get someplace and 2 days to get back, you don't stay there for 2 days. You end up staying there for 2 weeks. And So it was a little bit of a burden there, but it was fascinating because I started a company in China and also had that whole southeastern region that we were trying to deploy insurance and annuity products into a region that it was really somewhat of a startup concept.
And then just to point out, you came back, and of course, you were CFO of Mastercard, International for a period as well. So, with all these overseas sort of bona fides, what finally brings you home? What is it that you decided, let's get back stateside? What was it?
Well, it's a combination of where I am in my career and where I was with my family. And so when I went over to Belgium for MasterCard, and they also were going public at the time and looking for my experience and because I had European experience, bringing those consortium of banks on board to the concept that was more easily understood in the US of going public and the benefits, less understood in Europe because they were losing a sense of control that those banks had of the processing of a credit card. And so it was an interesting challenge. I also had the largest group I ever managed. There was over 110 people in that I was managing, and I learned quite a bit of leadership of large groups that way, to try to turn a finance and procurement group into leading a company, not just processing in the back office. And I had a great experience in doing that. But it's it's you have to look at where you are. And my oldest son was going to college, and my youngest son was going to high school. And the question is, do we make another 4-year commitment? Do we send my son to college in the U.S. and we're still in Europe? And we decided no. We're a family that stuck together, and we wanted to stay together. And so I started looking outside, and that's what drew me to Boston area with John Hancock. It allowed us to be stateside.
Understood. Those are great insights into decisions that many finance executives have to make along the way.
Yeah, you have to consider the whole piece. I mean, we can be very driven by our careers, but it can be very unsatisfying if you're not having your family enjoying the ride with you. And so both my sons really view the world as a small place now because we brought them along on certainly in the Europe when we lived over in Europe, and they see the world differently. And what an advantage that is today, where you see so many people just have a very closed view of how they think versus how the rest of the world thinks. I don't regret it for a second. I think I personally enjoyed the ride, but I also think my family did as well. And you have to at some point make that priority.
Okay, so at that point in time you described, you come back to Boston, you have this sort of a global resume or European resume largely. You're in financial services. Did you ever think about leaving that industry, stepping into a CFO role, and you're in the Boston area? Why not a tech firm? Or no? What was your mindset in terms of opportunities for you going forward?
Well, my expertise was financial services, payment products, with going from American Express to MasterCard to even John Hancock is more of a financial services than anything. And that was where obviously I had 20 years of knowledge built out, right? And so in looking for other opportunities, obviously people were approaching me that are in the related career. But as I moved into private equity, it gave me the chance to apply a more of a generic leadership operational skill set and to any companies that they were investing in. And it did give me the opportunity to branch out and work with a consulting type company, and a more of a alternative lending type company, which is different than payment products. And it gave me that chance to really branch out, which taught me that the skill sets that I learned in as a CFO were really transferable to many different industries. And so there is a learning curve there to know what are the drivers of a business. And there are some industries like I don't know if I can go into the automobile business. That would be probably a much deeper understanding of for long term. but it also opened up quite a bit that are just organizations looking for an end-to-end process that's efficient and understandable and helps the business.
Now, you joined MDA in 2018 as CFO, I believe. Was there a recruiter involved? How do they find you?
So it was an interesting point in my career. Part of working with private equity is, like I said, you every 3 years, if they sell out, you're like, okay, let's start again with somebody else. And the company I was working with had built its product up and its company up and sold out. And I'm sitting there at the end of 2018 and am I done? And should I just retire? And I've had a long, good career. I could retire. And that lasted about 30 days. And then I did get a call from a recruiter I had worked in the past and said, hey, by the way, I know what you're thinking, but this organization really needs what you've been doing for the last 20 years. And so they have some antiquated systems. They have a inefficient way that they're looking at things. They're really stuck, although they're becoming more and more relevant, but they're stuck in how they're run. And sure enough, when I got here, the amount of money that was going towards mission was roughly about 50% of all expenditures. It's 70 now. Their systems, there were 65 systems not even talking to each other. We have a single platform now, and it's all cloud-based. And so suddenly by my being able to pull that together, and they had no idea how to get started. So basically, they're acquiring me, right? And I'm like, all right, just told the board, you just got to trust me. I'm going to need some money, but I'll get you there. And sure enough, you just gotta find out where you are. You can't grow if you don't know where you are. And I've always had 3 ways of looking at every job I ever had. And that is get the house in order, get good information that tells you where you are in your business so you can make decisions. But then most critically, and a lot of finance people don't take it to this next level, use that information to influence the business. If you can't interpret it for them, dumping big decks of data on people's desk, who has time for that? So once again, you could build the greatest watch in the world. If you don't put the right face on it, you still don't know what time it is. And that's what I think influence is putting a face on the organization.
Well, let me just ask you about Muscular Dystrophy Association today. Many of us believe we know all about it, but tell us about MDA today. What sets it apart from maybe the organization we knew so many years ago?
Sure. MDA is a tremendous organization. To just put it in snapshot, Muscular Dystrophy Association is the #1 volunteer healthcare organization in the United States, has been for 70 years. And we treat people with neuromuscular muscular dystrophy, ALS, and a host of other related neuromuscular diseases, and has been for a long time. And our primary mission is to empower the people we serve to live more independent lives. That's what we do. That's why we're here. And so how do we do it? There's a few concrete ways of which we concentrate. Of course, there's research dollars, right? We've been plowing for these 70 years over $1 billion in research. Right now, I have $20 million outstanding research projects going on. And for a long time, that was on the hope. But now we've had over 20 FDA approvals in the last 15 years. Now the drugs are showing up. Now they're changing the lives of these individuals. It puts us in a complete, and now, they're expanding in even more and more. And as they start breaking down the DNA code and they start understanding what's driving these neuromuscular diseases. And part of it is, for many of these researchers, they can't get money anywhere else. MDA stepped in there and gave them money in a time when money may have been going to cancer or heart disease or diabetes. And now suddenly this is a $1 billion drug industry that suddenly, it's a lot of interest in there. But you turn back the clock. We were the ones that said, yes, we will give you your $500,000 million so you can start studying the DNA strain of what's driving this. And so as an organization, we take a lot of pride that all these drugs rolling out now It was built on the backs of a lot of support coming out of muscular dystrophy.
Can you give us some more perspective there? You mentioned how there's been a lot of advances with drugs in the last 10 years versus,
It's about the last 15 years. About 15 years ago, the FDA started approving treatments.
Yeah.
And then it's slowly getting more and more and more. And now we're starting, I'd say the last couple of years, we're almost seeing one or two a year now coming out.
Versus what was it before?
Before it was really care.
Yeah.
Right. It was really a much shorter lifespan for these individuals. You were trying to give them care such as wheelchair care or support or doctor's visits, support so that they can, manage their treatments. But quite frankly, it was a very short-term lifespan. Now our perspective is completely changing. You have individuals living neuromuscular diseases going through college, starting families. So it's not all about having camps to give them a life experience. We're now looking at scholarship programs to help them get through to college because it's much more difficult for them to just get through college sitting in a wheelchair, right? And so our focus is different now, and it's much wider now. You're talking lifespans, well over 40, 50 years now, as opposed to 5 to 10. And so it's a completely different arena. And that's what's changed with a lot of these treatments. It's really extended the lives significantly. And so research is one of them, but then you have our care center networks. We work with the over 185 major hospitals in the United States, where we provide funds to have a separate area that people with neuromuscular disease can go and visit their doctors, get treatment, and get help. We put over $70 million a year into that. And so that's a big part of our network of care. We also have a big resource center where we get over 1,000 calls a month in for people that, can you imagine when you first find out you have this disease, that you're completely confused, you're completely panicking, you're very upset, you're angry. You can come to MDA and start understanding. And so we can tell you what it's about. We can give you a perspective. We can show you where your care center is. We can tell you the opportunities. If it's a child, we can eventually offer you camp opportunities to reward have a rewarding life. And so the whole care center network and what we kind of bring together as, healthcare services is a big part of what we do as well. So you have research, healthcare services, and then we have community engagement where we're trying to enrich the lives of these individuals. And that's where we have camps, both in person and virtual. We have 815 campers that go through every year. It takes about 570 volunteers to do this. This is a big project. We have 22 camps around the United States. And this is a big deal. This is where we get feedback from mothers and fathers and saying, this week, which is free to them, this week that they did, not only transformed them because they suddenly were with people that also had this disease and they were realizing, no, I still can do things, but it's also a big relief for the families. It's because you think of that day-to-day care that they get a break from because they really hand their child off to these camps and there's doctors and nurses, volunteers there. It's a very safe environment, but it also is the kids want more. They don't want to go home. And they were like, my son didn't want to leave the house. And now he doesn't want to come home from camp. And so it can be very rewarding to them.
Michael, let me jump in because you mentioned earlier sort of a digital transformation. And in my mind, there's one way we look at that, visibility. Again, you arrived in 2018. Things are done differently. Certain numbers weren't visible to you. And in my mind, the success of you might have a different way of looking at it, but the success of a digital transformation is now, Michael, as the finance leader, he can see these numbers. He can look in and understand better how the association is performing. But is that the reality? And if so, tell us a little bit about what are those numbers that you can see today that maybe you couldn't see back in 2018?
Sure. I mean, it's interesting when you don't have a deep insight to your business. You look at other indicators that can be misleading. And for example, they're raising a lot of revenue, a lot of fundraising revenue. But if you're losing money off of it, you don't have that perspective. The money's not getting to the mission. And that was their perspective. Their perspective was just on, but we're raising a lot of money. And I said, yeah, but where's it going? You have a sense to become the toll taker, right? It's like the money all goes to the toll takers and the roads never get improved, right? And so you have to be careful with that. So the first thing I had to say is, no, we need a clear perspective. Then when I went to look, well, we don't have the platforms to get us that. So I had to build that. And I brought in contractors. Oh, this will take 18 months. I don't have 18 months. We're doing this in 7. By January 1st, 2019, I need a base that I can know where this organization is running. And we got there. And so suddenly I realized, wait a minute, it's costing us 60 cents on a dollar just to raise a dollar. That's crazy. You know what it is today? 32 cents. So suddenly that's the perspective. 50% of my all my expenditures weren't going to my mission. Now it's 70. So they had no idea. They couldn't see that. All they could see is, here's how much we're bringing in. But the process of, where's it going, is where it gets lost. And that's the value of it. Now,
can you get specific with us? What is the number that you began, making visible to the fundraising parties out there?
Well, some quick examples. When I started seeing what's actually was operating, looking at 93 offices across the United States. Why are we in an office? And then I find out the legacy was, when they were doing the telethon, they liked to have an office next to every TV station that was going to broadcast, because you would bring in a firefighter example who'd like to hold up and on the podcast. We stopped doing the telethon 8 years ago. So what are we doing? We were spending $8 million on office space. We are now 100% virtual. That $8 million immediately goes to the mission. We're not skipping a beat, because we go out to our sponsors. We go out to our care centers. We go out to our camps. We don't need a center to do that. So, now, of course, being 100% virtual coming post-COVID, it's also had additional benefits. But that's not what drove us. What drove us was why are we spending money there? Then we look at, where we're deploying our individuals. The cost of salaries and benefits was huge. But the productivity of it wasn't even looked at. So now I look at and say, hey, I'm looking at that over 90% of our revenue is coming from 48% of our activities. So that means 52% of our activities is generating 2% of revenue. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Should we be focused differently? And it really started shifting how we were organized, all because we now saw where we were. And you can't make a change until you know where you are. And that was why my first thing, single platform, go to Salesforce. I was able to get a lot of other software applications on the same platform, get rid of those 65 systems. They may keep the lights on, but nobody even knows what's going on. Single platform. We were able to drop in changes in the platforms of how we run galas and golfs and other events and programs. But more importantly, in a very quick manner, I now know it used to take them over 30 days every month to wrap up how they did. I now know how I did in 4 days. It's a little different, how fast you can make a course correction when you have rapid information and accurate information.
It's interesting when you think of that telethon, because it was the telethon. And for those who might not have been aware, this was MDAs. This was it got the most powerful lever annually with this annual telethon. To take that away with it, you are forfeiting something sizable. And I'm curious how this void was filled. And I imagine, it's over the last 2 decades, but still, it had to be quite a void to fill.
No, you're absolutely right. Remember, it's a different time too, right? So
Yeah.
we're forever thankful for Jerry Lewis to taking on that cause
Yeah.
and creating the concept of a telethon. It didn't exist before.
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, I'll date myself, there weren't many channels to watch. And you had an audience that on Labor Day would like to see Dean Martin sing, right? And so where today then eventually as you got into the 80s and 90s, it started shifting away. And then, to 10 years ago, you have 500 channels, you're surfing, you have an attention span of an audience that's a minute or less. It's completely different, right?
Yep.
And so the concept of reaching out in that forum just sunset.
So what does transformation mean now? I mean, what chapter is MDA part of now?
So our the transformation, and it took a while to get used to, but the transformation now is developing partnerships, and so partnerships with both corporations, partnerships with vendors that support us, but also corporations that we can provide a service to them, a golf tournament, a gala. We've worked for close to 70 years with the firefighters, the IAFF, International Firefighters Union, in doing fill the boot activities. You see them on the corners with their boot, and you throw change in there. It was a $22 million rewarding annual reward. That change added up, right? And we're forever thankful to the firefighters, their dedication. They attend our camps, and they're really passionate for helping these kids with these diseases. And so it was more program driven then. And so, but it changed how you have to deal. It wasn't a marquee event with a star. It was more trying to build that partnership relationship. I will allow you to be connected to a diversity cause, which let's face it, public companies have a reason they do things. And then at the same time, you're going to see how impactful you can make on the lives of these individuals. And once you make that connection now it's a win-win, right? Everybody wins on that. And now you have a long-standing partnership. Mm-hmm.
I kind of strayed from our lines of sight discussion, and I wanted to find out if there was a particular. It's one thing to create and get these systems in place and begin generating the numbers. It's another to get the organization to start dining on them and educating the organization. How did you do that? Could you share with us how organizationally you were able to drive the change that happened here?
Sure. I mean, look, I have some history given to me. I've been here for 6 years. This transformation happened a bit before me. Change is hard, right? And not everybody wants to be part of a new way. So you're going to go through turnover part of the change, both at the top and right through the organization, right? So there were a few CEOs that came in with some thoughts of how to shift this. But I think the biggest change probably happened 3 years ago when we have a new CFO, Dr. Donald Wood, came in and took the perspective, no, why are we here? We're here for one MDA. We're here because we're serving people. We're here for the mission. Everything else is building towards that. Where when you were going initially through the change, you start creating silos. I will raise funds. I will do mission. And so forth. I'm successful raising funds, even though my margin is very low and I'm not giving you much money, but look how well I'm doing. Where now the focus is, now that, I came in a little 2 years before he did, he was on the board, but coming into this role, I said, look, you have the right platform now. You have the right efficiency now. Now we need to change the dynamic. And he was like, that's exactly what I want to do. I need a focus on the mission. That's why we're here. And so then we concentrated a lot of efforts on talking to the individuals, holding town halls, making sure that the information is being pushed down, and also counseling people that don't want to play that way. Well, that's who we are now. So maybe you're better off playing in another arena, right? Because this is why we need to be here. And sure enough, our star rating goes up in Charity Navigator. We get a brand new certificate from Better Business Bureau, which had 20 criteria of how impactful we were. It's working. Suddenly my operational metrics are all going in the right direction, and I'm growing. Before they were going in the wrong direction, and my growth was negative. So it's hard. Like, I can prove now as a CFO that this is working. When you have the information and you make those decisions and you have the right KPIs to measure those decisions, you gain confidence that you're on the right track. And then part of that is now saying, okay, look, a good chunk of our programs need my skill set of operational efficiency. So they give me the chief operating officer title. They don't take away the chief financial officer title, but they say, no, there's a merge here. And let's create a different group that goes out and gets new product development, which is a hunter skill set's different than a farmer skill set, right? So all of these things start layering out as you start going down this path. You don't see it all at first, but I've learned in my career, get started and it will start rolling for you.
When it comes to forecasting, can you maybe give us just an abbreviated report card? How are you doing? Are you able to look into the future the way you want?
Yeah, and look, the COVID was a devastating impact. I lost almost 60% of my revenue overnight, but we didn't give up on providing benefits, right? And so there was a strain. So fortunately, we had some reserves to help us with the strain. I was able to get some banking relationships to help with some strain, and then fortunately, the efficiencies we started was starting to kick in, right? And so it allowed us to get through without leaving our mission. And so now the mission is just flying off the shelf. We have more ideas than we can get to now because it's really, this is the time in the neuromuscular field because of these FDA drugs and the improvements. And some of these drugs are people difficult walking and now they're walking. I mean, it's just transformational. We're not back on the revenue side though. All right. So trying to go from a $100 million revenue organization, we're around 75 million now. We fell down to 20. So it's in these few years, it's a strong comeback. But we're looking beyond 100 million. We have that capability. We're making these connections. I expect each year to be going forward more of a step level than just a percentage. And as we have a new focus on, new business, sort of new relationships, individual giving in bigger ways, foundations, as we look at that, which has not been a legacy of this organization, to look at that, there's tremendous opportunity. This 70-year-old company is like a child again. It's got tons of energy. It's got tons of prospect in front of it. There's a long way to go here.
Michael, we always like to ask what we refer to as a finance strategic moment. And we're asking you to look back in time and just choose one moment of strategic insight you experienced as a finance executive. What comes to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
I would have to say it was when I moved from Frankfurt, Germany, for American Express over to the UK. And I was the CFO of all their operations throughout 23 countries, a couple of $1 billion, when $1 billion meant something back then. And so it was an important job and a big impact. And to that point in my career, I was a pure finance person. And I fortunately had a mentor who ran the operating center that says, no, you need to be a leader. He said, you're too important to my organization to not be able to help me lead it. And he really taught me that the leadership aspects of my job was becoming even more important than knowing the finance and knowing the numbers. I had that. I have my CPA. I went for MBA. I've had, at that point, 34, 35 years old. It's like I have experience. I can look at a set of numbers and I see what's wrong right away. So I built that up. But how do I get people to understand what I see so that they can make changes? And I will have to say, his name was Bill Barton. He made a transformational change for me. I would not be where I am today without him waking me up that you can't get to a senior level unless you understand the impact of leadership.
Can I ask a follow-up there? I mean, what did you do to acquire, to become a leader? Was there leadership development programs that they encouraged you to step into?
There was. It was called Excellence in Leadership. Great name. And there was an organization called Stop at Nothing that was working with us. And they basically worked on your behaviors, right? Saying that you have to start there. You need to start understanding what you're giving off first. And it also, we brought in a little bit of technical training there to understand what your style was. But more important for me was I was not surprised what my style was, but it was more important to me understand other styles and how do I work with that? How do I adapt my style for someone? How do I take my introverted, very organized style to someone that is more of a broad thinker, more of I'm sorry, I'm extroverted, but more of someone introverted that I need to bring out their ideas for them that I know they have, but they're sitting with them a little bit. And so from that point on, I suddenly, it wasn't about how I did it. It was trying to quickly understand what is the best way to get something out of the people that I'm influencing and working with, right? And so you start getting training, right? I've done a number of DISC training, Myers-Briggs training. You have to go through the training. You can't just, you got to do the work, right? And so, but then once you understand the dynamics of how important understanding people's approaches and behaviors, you then can modulate your behavior, and suddenly you're getting the best out of somebody. And so, because they feel they're being heard, they're understood, they're part of the solution. And it was interesting that the time I was learning this, there was also a sea change in the employee base where they insisted on being part of the process. The old command and control way, the old just do what your boss tells you to do, was going away. And so I was very fortunately to get this shift at a time when the population base of employees were shifting as well. And so now I can relate to them a little bit and give them that feeling that they're a little bit more empowered. They may not have final decision, but they're helping shaping the decision. And that's very important to employees today. They need to feel that.
This is 1 Minute with CFO Anna Chadwick of Pitney Bowes.
With the raise in interest rates and the cost of capital going up, everyone, myself and all my CFO peers, are out there saying, any money we're spending, we're better be spending it for a massive return, because the cost of capital is prime and premium, and we're all here to make those better business outcomes and better business decisions. And how do we partner with our CEOs and the business to deliver that? It's now more than ever more important.
Michael, we're going to jump to our mentoring round where we'll ask you several quick questions intended to inspire and inform future finance leaders. We want you to think back to your first 60 days at MDA. You first stepped into this role. And as much as you knew and as prepared as you were for this particular CFO tour of duty, there must have been something you wish somebody had told you. It must have been something that if you could go back in time, you would tell yourself this. Anything?
Well, there were probably two things. One is probably normal. Like, they never tell you how big the hole is. Nobody ever does. You'd never join them if anyone really told you everything. So I have that assumption. What you're telling me is probably 2x of that, right? So that wasn't as much as a surprise, although it turned out to be true. There was a lot more to do than what they were asking me to do. But I think what would have helped me as I transferred from a public company environment, which I understood very well, my first year in a nonprofit environment was much different in how to influence people. And I wish I had more mentorship on that, because I wasted a lot of time of not connecting with them because of that. You in a profit-oriented company, at the end of the day, people's bonuses are on the line. They may not agree with you, but they're going to probably come along, and so you have a financial lever. You don't have that in nonprofit. You have passionate people that are here for a different reason. You need to spend more time convincing them why a shift in the way we work is going to be beneficial to them. And so that took me a long time, because it's dead obvious. Like, we can't keep wasting money. We can't let's just make this change. And people looking at me, no, that's not what we do. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm not going to do it. And then you had to get them to understand, well, wait a minute. So, well, then why are you here? Well, I'm here to serve the people with neuromuscular disease. Okay, at 60 cents on a dollar to raise money, you're not serving very much. And so if we can get this down, just think of how many more tens of millions of dollars would go over to the mission side. And suddenly they see it differently. But it did take me my first year to really get through that. And because I'm making a lot of changes, people are getting a lot of nervous over the changes. I'm moving the cheese around, right, as they say. And I didn't spend enough time understanding I was in a different environment. And once I understood that, my changes from that point on in the next 4 years were a lot easier to do. And because they knew I was coming in really to enhance them. My job doesn't change any, but the change I'm making really will help them. And so that was a big one that I wish I did not appreciate the shift in mentality from how people approach a job in the nonprofit industry versus in a profit industry that was more success outcome, maybe financially driven, personally outcome, and so on. So
great insight there for us. We like to ask our guests to reflect a little bit on the personal side. Michael, we wonder if there's something that in general most people might not know about you, something you'd like we could ask you to share with us.
Well, there's a couple of things. They're slowly finding out about me that I have a strong passion for golf. I'm an 8 handicap, and sure, that's not the reason I joined an organization that has golf events, but it's something I just love to do, and it's an interesting sport in that it's time consuming, but it's very hard for me in my position to step out of my head and allow myself to just think, or even my subconscious to get to work. And you can't golf without concentrating on the sport. And I find myself with a number of issues at work in my head. I go golfing, and on the way home, I have the answer. It's like I gave that side of my brain a break, and it worked a solution. So I actually find the golf very therapeutic for me. It's also it taps into my competitive side as well with my friends, but I find it really therapeutic. I didn't expect that coming out of the sport, and so the other aspect not many people know about me is I was for a long time a very serious chess player, and but I haven't done it in a long time, and I think I've lost. You lose that thinking skill to perform there. But I used to love the game of chess, and I think my career and the way I work is somewhat of a chessboard as well. Is trying to understand all the pieces of an organization. So maybe that delved in well to my thinking at the time. But the last bit, I love to travel. You can see I've had a career, been to quite a number of countries. I just love meeting different cultures, different types of people, though, and just interacting with them. I just find
I can't help but point out again, though, for our listeners, because so many finance leaders tell us about their efforts to go abroad, maybe for a year or two, and many of them don't succeed. Many of them would have loved to have had that opportunity and never quite had it land. It seems like it was serendipity for you. It seems like just to emphasize again, it just came your way. It wasn't
right.
like you were looking for it. That's right. Plain and simple.
Absolutely. And look, I would recommend it to anyone. It opens your eyes to different ways. I learned as much as I taught when I was there. But I would agree. I had many expat friends that just couldn't adapt. That they didn't. You have to absorb yourself into the culture. You can't bring an American style and imprint it in Germany, England, Belgium. It just doesn't work. You're going to have to give a little bit, but if you do, you're going to learn a lot. But not everybody can do it. It's too uncomfortable. And you would see expats for 1 year. And those are ones that just couldn't adapt. And it's funny enough. They asked me to go over to Germany for a year to fix something, and I came back from Europe 15 years later. So it's like
well put. Is there a book or a selection for us? Something that's influenced your thinking over time? Anything?
Dare to Lead. It's by Brene Brown. Fascinating story. I've also done a lot of reading around the Myers-Briggs profiling way of thinking. and in people's behaviors as a way to understand how people approach things. And there's a lot of different theories out there. That one just happened to hit me very well and understanding, and I can relate to it.
Let me ask you something about a finance hire when you make a finance hire, how important it is. And I think it's obvious you're going to tell us it's very important that they see the mission as one of the primary reasons perhaps for joining MDA. Is it though? Or if you've got someone with an impressive finance resume, and again, this is someone in the finance function, not necessarily on the front lines at events and what have you, how important is that mission?
So I think as I look at hiring, and I apply this either at senior positions or other positions in the finance world, there's two things. You do have to have a passion in nonprofits to want to do this because it's different, right? And so that passion comes into play of why you're here, what you're trying to serve. Excuse me. If you don't have I'd like to serve mentality, it's difficult, right? From the competency standpoint, I can take people in high or low skill sets of finance. But the one thing I'm looking for is this person intellectually curious. Is if they see a problem with them, do they just like, well, no one asked me to fix it, or I can't go home tonight. I got to solve this. I need to understand what this is. That is harder to find, and that is your next level leaders that think that way. And so a lot of my interviewing questions and my conversations is trying to probe is experiences where they demonstrated that intellectual curiosity, that they saw something, they may have even went a little bit beyond their job description to help solve something, but it was something that it's not right, it needs to be fixed, it's not a burden to take it on, it's just something to do, and that needs to get done. When I find those people, that's solid gold,
We are up to our final question, where we'll ask you to look forward finally. And what we're wondering is what your priorities are as CFO of MDA for the coming 12 months. What would those priorities be?
Right. Well, I have the overall responsibility as CFO to steward this organization in a healthy way. I think I've been able to bring it to a healthy way, but you got to maintain it. You can easily fall back. So I spend a lot of time, making sure we have the right cash flow. We're making the right decisions. We're not getting ahead of ourselves. I'm working with the relationships outside, all the contracts that we have, making sure I have partnerships there, not just vendors looking to make money off of me. And so I'm constantly, I need their expertise to help us, not just sell us, right? And so I'm constantly on the lookout for that. With my chief operating officer role, though, which is what really I only started that this past June, is to really fire up the revenue production. And so the existing base of sponsors we have, some really great long-standing partners such as Citgo, the International Firefighter Union, Costa, Dutch Bros, all some great brands. We need to deepen the relationship with them so that we can get past that $100 million milestone again. And I'm here to support. We just hired a great lady to come and help us develop the new business stuff, and I'm here to support that. So to me, there's still a lot more to be done. I can't take that off the ball, but the number one issue is to try to get the revenue fired up so that we can do all the mission things that are in front of us.
Michael Kennedy, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
All right, I appreciate it very much, and thank you for the time.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. As you have perhaps already heard or even seen, we're now featuring the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our CFO guests as Thought Leader videos. You can now find these videos on our blog at cfothoughtleader.com and, of course, our newsletters but also on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader LinkedIn company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.